Across the freshly harvested fields, the remaining banana stalks lie strewn about like something forgotten. But for this factory, this is only the true beginning. Even as clear sap is still seeping across the cut surface, the banana stalks are already being dragged through the mud, gathered into heavy mounds of raw material. The grapple claws bite down, lifting that entire mass of biomass and dropping it neatly into the truck bed, setting in motion a transfer that is not allowed to be slowed. The trucks leave the plantation with banana stalks piled above the sidewalls, rocking hard over the wet ground as if they are carrying the moisture of the whole field with them. All along the road to the factory, that heap of raw material shudders with every pothole, while water and sap keep seeping out from between the crowded stalks. The moment they reach the gate, each truck is immediately drawn into the factory's intake rhythm, where everything begins to be measured, weighed, and controlled. Only minutes later, the entire truck bed is already raised upright, dumping all the banana stalks into a receiving pit so deep it looks like a thick green river being poured into concrete. In the receiving pit, the raw material piles up into one enormous chaotic mass. The main conveyor never hesitates, simply swallowing one waterlogged banana stalk after another and pushing them deeper into the line. Along both sides of the line, workers look quickly but with remarkable precision, and the instant a stalk appears bruised or too old, it is pulled out of the main flow at once. The rest are divided by thickness and size, as if even a soft and vulnerable plant has to learn how to obey an industrial rhythm. At the cutting station, each stalk is split into uniform sections, and from that point on, its original shape is almost gone. The entire stream of material slides into the longitudinal splitting shop, where those short sections begin to reveal what they truly are. The splitting blade draws a straight line through the water-filled core, opening each section wide as if peeling back the skin of a living thing. On the next conveyor, those halved stalks spread open into broad sheaths, exposing which layer carries the fiber and which is nothing more than useless soft tissue. Massive press rollers force the banana sheaths flat, while also separating the thick sections from the thin ones to prepare them for the right degree of stripping. Wherever a strip is still twisted or folded, workers have to straighten it by hand, because the slightest misalignment will cause the next machine to take the entire strip wrong. Then comes the moment when the mouth of the decorticator swallows each banana sheath without hesitation, as if from here there is no path back to its former shape. Inside, the soft flesh is stripped away first and runs downward as a slurry of pulp, while the fiber-bearing portion is pulled onward. The steel troughs below catch all of that freshly stripped wet tissue, while the layer that remains has already begun to tremble and separate into fiber. The drawing rollers tighten their grip, the scraper blades shave away the last flesh still clinging to it, and the same sheath now emerges with a completely different face. One end of the machine is still swallowing wet, dense material, while the other is already dropping the first rough clumps of banana fiber. When all three lines discharge fiber at once, it becomes clear that this factory is not merely processing banana plants, it is breaking them into two different destinies. The usable fiber goes up onto the main line, while the soft pulp flows down into the secondary line, where it is pressed again until the water is driven out. On the collection conveyor, The tangled clumps of fiber pile on top of one another so quickly that workers have to walk with the line and free each snagged mass by hand. Under the harsh lights, you can clearly see the long strands, the short strands, the fragments, and the sticky layer of sap still clinging thickly to every bundle. At that moment, the entire extraction hall feels like a storm of moisture, vapor, soft pulp, raw fiber, and steel all moving at once. But a harder step still lies ahead because what has just come out of the decorticator cannot yet be called a clean material. The first press tightens around the whole fiber layer, squeezing out a thick green-brown liquid as if dragging every last hidden trace of sap out of the plant body. Right after that, the fiber sinks into the first wash tank, where paddles and rollers force it to open wide in the water. In the degumming section, the metering pumps dose the chemicals with exact precision, then pull the entire fiber sheet through the heated zone at a speed that cannot be wrong. When it comes out, the bundle is no longer matted tight the way it was before. It begins to breathe, begins to loosen, begins to resemble something that can truly be processed further. A final rinse sweeps the residue away, and the technicians do only a quick inspection before sending it straight back onto the running line. The wet fiber is loaded into a centrifuge to fling out the free water, then dropped onto a conveyor that leads into a drying tunnel stretching far into the distance. Inside that band of heat, the color of the fiber shifts gradually from dark and damp to bright gold, and the final conditioning rollers soften it completely before it leaves the line. When it comes out of the softening unit, banana fiber no longer carries the heavy look it had just after extraction. And that is the moment when the factory begins choosing a future for each strand. On the sorting belt, gentle vibration and the sensor system gradually bring the long fibers into view as a separate stream, while the shorter pieces and fine fragments gather on their own into another flow. The finest fiber stream is kept for the weaving branch, where the material must be long enough, clean enough, and even enough to enter a far more delicate world. The shorter portion drops into the paper line, quieter perhaps, but no less important, because here nothing is allowed to go to waste. In the fabric branch, the fine carding machine uses thousands of steel teeth to pull each bundle of fiber straight, stripping away the last remaining bits of residue. The fiber web is then drawn into a stable sliver by the drawing frame and coiled neatly into cans as if it has finally learned how to lie still. From those cans, the sliver is pulled up into the spinning machine, where the roller train thins it little by little. Right at the boundary between fiber and thread, the material suddenly changes its nature completely, It is no longer a loose bundle of strands, but a continuous line that can be led on and on. The twisting system locks that structure tight, giving the banana yarn enough strength to bear tension before it is wound evenly onto large cones. The optical sensor standing in the middle of the line exists for one very cold task alone: see a fault, cut it, splice it, and let the line keep running, almost without leaving a trace. In the color room, workers load the cones onto carriers, lock them into place, and then let the entire pumping system drive the dye liquor through each package of yarn. Under stable heat and pressure, the color sinks in deeply, quietly, yet enough to turn that pale yarn into a material with a character of its own. Once dried, the dyed cones are checked again under calibrated light, because even the slightest shift in shade is enough to stop the whole batch. When they pass, they are pushed into the weaving hall, lined up to await the final transformation of the textile branch. Each cone is mounted onto the creel. Each yarn end is drawn through guide mechanisms and stretched into a dense field of warp threads. Then the loom begins to beat in rhythm, heddles rising and falling, the weft darting through, the reed pressing everything into its exact place. Only a few moments later, the first sheet of banana fabric appears, and from that instant, the entire weaving floor seems to shift into a different heartbeat. In the paper branch, the short fiber is poured into the pulping tank, where the rotor tears it apart until its original form can no longer be seen. That pulp mass is circulated until it becomes truly even. Then it passes through cleaning stages that strip away heavy contaminants and any coarse fragments left behind. After fine screening and consistency adjustment with processed water, the banana paper stock is finally ready to continue on to the paper machine. The refined stock rushes through the steel piping system to the head box, where it is spread out one last time before falling onto the forming wire. The instant it touches the wire, the water begins to drop below while the fibers remain on the surface, as if the whole material were teaching itself how to bind together. After only a few meters, what had once been a cloudy liquid has become a continuous wet web, and the vacuum boxes quietly pull away part of the water still hidden inside it. When that young web leaves the forming section and enters the press zone, you can feel very clearly that it is no longer pulp, but it is not yet fully paper either. Massive press rolls tighten it, while the drying cylinders behind them draw off the last moisture through prolonged, steady heat. Once it leaves that section, the paper surface is brighter, flatter, and rigid enough to continue through the calendar stack and then the cutting machine that standardizes its dimensions. Finished paper stacks slide out in an even rhythm, just as in the final inspection area, the fabric is also being examined under the light table. On one side, they search for weaving defects across the moving fabric surface, while on the other, they measure the thickness, strength, and color of each sampled paper pile. Once both pass that stage, the fabric roll is wrapped in film, the paper is packed into reams, and the two finished product streams begin merging into a single logistics system. Forklifts and automated pallets carry them into storage, where the material has fully left the world of agriculture behind and crossed into the world of goods. In the shipping zone, robots stack the loads onto pallets, and when the banana fabric is spread out in a studio while the banana paper rests neatly on a work table, what remains is not merely two products, but clear proof that the part of the plant once abandoned out in the field can still leave the factory bearing a completely different value.